Hi, everybody. Welcome. You're listening to the Boss Body Podcast. This is Sarah Haas. I am so happy you're here. And I have an amazing guest for you today. And something I've been wanting to talk about for quite a while is yoga. And Nicky Yazbeck is on today because she is the absolute expert on yoga. She's been a yoga teacher for over 20 years. She's trained in numerous yoga styles and disciplined, and she's even studied extensively in India. And she's also a licensed clinical social worker. So she's going to talk to us not just about the physical benefits of yoga, of which there are many, but also some of the mental and emotional and spiritual aspects as well. Um, Yoga has so many benefits. And one of the things that I love about it is that anyone can do it. No matter your level of ability, it's accessible to everyone. And it's just amazing. I have my own yoga practice as well. I teach yoga a couple days a week, and I also practice a few days a week. So, Nikki, it is wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, I know that you have studied yoga like forever and you've been teaching yoga forever. And I would
Yeah.
love to hear, how did that get started? What drew you to yoga? And then how did that progress into you going deeper into your studies and learning to teach and all of that?
Yeah. Well, I think my first yoga class I ever attended, I believe it was around 1999. And I got into it because my mom was a yoga teacher and she had been teaching and practicing for a long time. And she kept pushing me to try this, try this, try this. I went to a couple of classes and they didn't fit for me. They weren't good fits. And so I kind of shelved it for a little while. And then I went back on my own, not because my mom wanted me to go. And I went back on my own. And what I discovered was there's different types of classes for different people. And I found one that fit for me. And once I found one that fit for me, I was so excited. And I think in the beginning, my ego got in the way because I was good at it. I was naturally flexible. I was pretty strong. And so I found it pretty easy, but I don't think I was doing it in the correct way at that time. And so I was feeding my ego a little bit, but it was also really fun. It was different. And then as I dove into it further and further, there was a spiritual element that I grabbed onto. There was this feeling of serenity, and I was more at peace, and I've made it more of a priority in my life. And it really changed my life in so many ways and influenced me in so many ways. And so I love it. And I do love it because of what you said. It's accessible for everybody at any age, even people with disabilities, people with injuries. And it's one thing that you can get better at as you age. So a lot of times in our 30s, we tap out and it's just a decline from there with any sports or any activities. But with yoga, you can see progress no matter what age you start with it. And so I'm just super passionate about it.
So tell me a little bit about all of these different modalities that you've studied. And I know you studied in India extensively. And I think a lot of people listening have, of course, heard of yoga and maybe practiced a little bit of yoga, but it can be sort of intimidating when you hear all these words in Sanskrit and different, and you're like, I don't know, like, how do I know what that means? It can be
Yeah.
intimidating to even start a yoga practice. So tell me a little bit about the things that you've studied and why.
I think initially I was drawn to Vinyasa Flow, which Vinyasa Flow is kind of a faster moving practice. It's for type A people. It's really cardio. There's a lot of movement and there's moving the body and syncing that with the breath. And so being that kind of type A active person, that was what drew me in initially. Then I got into Ashtanga, which is similar in that way, but it's a set of sequenced poses. And there's a very strong method to it. So it's 90 minutes. You go to the same class, there's the same poses every single time, and there's three series of that. And so the first series is beginner, and you're in that series for a really long time. Not a lot of people make it to the third series, which is super, super advanced. Um, and so those were the ones I studied for a really long time. And then when I went to India, I wanted to dive deeper into all the different aspects of yoga. So I went and studied with an Ashtanga teacher. I went and studied with like a traditional Hatha teacher, with which Hatha is not so active. It's more like different poses one at a time. I studied with an Iyengar teacher, which Iyengar style is uses tons more props and it's very alignment focused. And so they all have their advantages and their disadvantages. And when I'm guiding people towards yoga, because it's like one word and everyone has this picture of what yoga looks like for them, but then there's 20 different styles and they're all vastly different. And then if you go to a class and that one teacher teaches a style or they advertise a style and you go to 20 teachers, you're going to have a different experience based on the teacher that you go to. And so when I'm guiding people to what to go towards, it's really find a studio that you resonate with and that you vibe with, or a teacher, and then look at what the style is and see if you resonate with that style, and then try a bunch of classes. You're going to just try 10 classes, try 10 different teachers, and then one teacher's really just going to resonate with you and their style and the way they explain things and their pacing and how much hands-on they do. And so it's really just dipping your toe in the water with multiple teachers to figure out what's the best fit for you. But I mean, I've taught chair yoga to dialysis patients where they're not super mobile. And so for or senior citizens, like you can do chair yoga. And then and that's what I love about yoga is that you can work around injuries and things like that. But I always think that people are drawn to the style of yoga that's incorrect for them. And what I say is like me, I'm like type A person. And so I was wanting those type A yoga practices, which was super heavy and super hard and super fast and cardio. But what my body was really needing was more of a yin style class or a restorative class, which is slow and it's more breath work and there's not as much movement and there's not a cardio element. And so I find that people that need to get their body moving more are drawn to those type of classes. And so it's really about going in a little bit into discomfort too and doing something that is not what you're drawn to. So for me, being that type A person, when I would go to a restorative class, I would be looking at my watch and planning my lunch, and I would get bored and I would drift off. And so it takes some time to sit in those kinds of classes, and maybe just dip them in every once in a while. So you do that hard cardio one more often, but then every once in a while you go to that other class so that you can calm your nervous system down and restore yourself in a different way.
That's so true what you said because I'm like you. I'm a type A. I love to exercise. I love to push myself and get my heart rate up. And I'm always drawn to the more fast-paced classes that really challenge your body. And when I go to more of a restorative yin type class, I'm I hate to say it, but I feel like it's a waste of a workout. You know what I mean? Like I only have
Yeah.
a certain amount of time and I really want to work hard, but my monkey brain and my
Yeah.
type A and my stressful personality needs that slowing down, that unwinding. So I'm glad you said that because if you don't exercise a lot and you're not used to getting your heart rate up, of course you're going to feel more comfortable in the slower paced classes. And I am all about take yourself a little outside your comfort zone in whatever it is in
Yeah.
life, because that's how you expand your boundaries. If you stay in your comfort zone, you're just staying stuck. You're still repeating the same thing, and you don't know what the world could open up for you. But with yoga, I love that you said try a bunch of different classes, see what resonates with you, because I have had people that clients of mine that I have recommended to start yoga practice, which actually I recommend it to pretty much everybody because I'm a huge advocate.
Yeah.
And they'll say, "Well, I tried it and I just didn't really like it." And I'm like, "Well, there's a whole lot of different styles. There are different all the teachers have a different way of sequencing. Their voice is different, the way they explain the poses is different, and it varies so much from class to class, studio to studio, teacher to teacher." And the thing that I love is that you can start yoga no matter where you are. If you are an ultra beginner, completely sedentary, doesn't matter your weight. Like you said, I mean, you even have people who with medical conditions who can do chair yoga. And no matter where you start from, you can build and improve. You can improve your flexibility, your strength, your range of motion, which is huge because my whole thing is aging well, aging vibrantly, and being able to do whatever you want to do for decades to come.
Hmm.
And yoga is just such an amazing way, and it's so approachable if you get out of that mindset of it's scary, I'm not flexible, I can't do it, I'm going to look stupid because everyone else in the class is going to know what they're doing and I won't.
Yeah.
So can you speak a little bit to the actual benefits of yoga? So if someone's listening and they're thinking, okay, I've heard it's good for me, but why? Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit
Yeah.
about what's happening? And I know that it's multifaceted, but that's
Yeah.
the cool thing about yoga.
Yeah, I mean, you're building muscle, you're building strength, you're building endurance, you can get that cardio workout. You're working with your flexibility, you're working with your balance. I think balance is really interesting because some people, I think it's because we wear shoes all the time. And so a lot of people just don't have balance and coordination, and especially as they get older. And what I've noticed is that with some practice, balance can come back really quickly. And why is that important? Because we're walking down the street and you take a misstep and you start to trip and fall. If you have that balance and coordination and you're doing yoga, you're so likely just to barely misstep and just keep going and keep walking versus just that throwing you off completely. And I think balance is more important than people think. And then having your barefoot feet touching the ground, connecting with the earth, connecting with your body. And as this culture is so disconnected to self in general, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our body sensations, because we're so externalized in social media and immediate gratification and watching TV and getting those dopamine hits, however we get those dopamine hits, we're not used to sitting in our body. And so what is it? What is it that our body's feeling? Where are we feeling this in our body? And there's this really cool thing that happens where in yoga there's introverted poses and extroverted poses. So an introverted pose would be child's pose when you're curled in a little ball, or you're doing a forward fold where you're folding your chest down towards your knees. And then an extroverted pose would be those warrior poses, those standing poses with your arms out to the side and your chest expanding. And so, what I've seen in classes too is that there's this confidence that starts to build. So, we can say, all right, go into that warrior pose and ground your feet into the earth and like really engage your muscles. So you're not just standing with your arms out, but imagine you're shooting electricity through your arms. It's your arms are strong. So if somebody was to barely push your arms down, there would be that resistance, right? And then feel your heart expanding. And this is your pose of strength and courage. This is your warrior pose. And so you can see that when people start, especially with the texting culture and the culture where we're on our computers all day, and we start to round our body, then their posture starts to improve, their heart starts to open, their shoulders start moving back, and then they start walking through the world more confidently. So there's all these like psychological benefits, not to mention, right, that it helps with insomnia, it helps calm your nervous system, it helps with your sleep, it helps with all that nervous nervous system regulation. And so you're getting that balance in your body and your mind, and that there's a spiritual element too as you go into yoga where you are connecting with your body, you are connecting with your breath, you are connecting with your soul, and all of your focus isn't going out into the external world. And that's so important now to just take time to sit with ourselves. If it's journaling, if it's breathing, if it's meditating, if it's yoga, and yoga is a moving meditation. We do yoga so that we can sit in meditation for long periods of time. But when you do yoga, it is a moving meditation. And so there's just like a plethora of benefits, but also when you're in these poses, you can be passively in the poses. So you can passively forward fold, but you can also do it in an active way. And that's kind of one of the ways I teach, where you're getting the benefits of improving your flexibility while building strength at the same time. Same like I said with the warrior pose, you can stand in that pose and you can be passive, or you can really stand in that pose and feel your body and engage all those muscles. And then you're building that muscle much faster. And so it's not just about flexibility, it's about both, and both are super important. So,
I
yeah.
love what you said about your power because I have to say when I am doing yoga, I probably feel my most powerful ever.
Mm,
And I, of course, warrior pose comes to mind immediately because we're warriors, right? And we don't know we're warriors a lot of times. We don't own that. And when you strike that pose and everything is active, you're not just kind of flopping your arms out and just going through the motions. When you really focus on each muscle, you feel more powerful. And it's so true that yoga improves your posture because like you said, we're all starting to get these rounded shoulders. Everything we do is forward. Texting, computers, cooking, picking things up, all of that. And yoga to me is an opening up. It's like an opening up of your body. And when you do that, I feel like you're you're in a position of receiving from the universe, receiving abundance, receiving love. Because if you're all closed up, you're sort of blocking. And then when you
yeah.
open, you're receiving. But it's also taking up space in the world, especially for women. We're sort of taught to make ourselves smaller. Don't take up too much space. Don't be too loud. Be behind the scenes, let the men be front and center. You kind of stay in the background and be quiet. And so we fold in. And then when you're in yoga and you have your mat, that is your space. And the yoga teacher says, all right, strike that pose, spread your arms as wide as you can, spark through your fingertips, push your feet on the mat, ground yourself, and act like one of the cues that one of my favorite instructors says is ground your feet and then act like you're trying to pull apart the mat in the middle with your feet by
Mhm,
pushing open. And that just makes me feel so powerful. And that is such an amazing
mhm.
feeling.
Yeah.
I love that. And also, you're building that connection with your body, which a lot of us are disconnected, very disconnected. We're going through our days ignoring our body's signals of hunger, thirst, fatigue, all of those things, not giving it what it needs. And so we're tuning it out, we're blocking it out. And then when you're in yoga, you're
Mhm,
just so hyper focused. You feel every sensation, you feel every muscle that it really starts to build that reconnection with your body. And I think that's just such a beautiful thing. And for me, yoga is very much a meditation because I have that type A
mhm,
monkey mind. I'm going 100 miles a minute in my brain all day long. And I do meditate, but that is always a work in progress. It's a
Yeah,
little,
yeah,
I have little snippets of being in the moment, but I'd say 85 to 90% of the time, my brain is still running in the background. I keep having to go, oh yeah, wait, oh yeah, wait, you're in the moment. When I'm in yoga, I am thinking of nothing else. I'm
yeah,
hearing the instructor, I'm working on the pose, I'm focusing on my body positioning, using the proper muscle, stretching the right spot, whatever that is. And I am completely in the moment for an hour. And for me, that is huge stress relief. Whether it's a hardcore class or a yin class, like I said, I like the hardcore better because that really just
hmm,
focuses my mind, and the yin, it wants to wander. But that's a good practice for me to go to that yin. It's like meditation, working on where you're not as strong. We always
yeah,
want to work the muscles we're strongest at. If your
yes,
legs are strong, you always want to do leg workouts. If your core is weak, you never want to do core exercises.
yes, yeah,
So, you also mentioned the breath. And I wanted you to talk a little bit more of that because that's really a big part of the connection with your
yeah,
body. Can you explain that a little bit? And how does the breath work in with all of the
yeah.
other things, the poses? Because you're not just doing the poses, you're also timing everything with your body so everything's in sync.
Yeah. Yeah. The breath is the most important part of the practice, in my opinion. It's the thing that I place the most emphasis on. So in the beginning, it's too much to figure out right and left and where your body is in space and time and the breath. So in the beginning, like just go to class, get comfortable, start understanding the names of the poses. That'll start to get more familiar. As that gets more familiar, you don't have to think right arm goes where and left leg goes what. Like, we're really super uncoordinated when we first come into class. And so just get all that under your belt, not worry about any of that. But then once that starts to get comfortable, and this is where like the magic happens, is then we start to tap into our breath. And so every single movement is linked with the breath. So you're thinking for an hour, you are focusing on your body and you're focusing on your breath. And so every inhale movement or every expansive movement um, is like up is usually an inhale, down is an exhale, or you're opening and an inhale and closing on an exhale. And so every single movement is synced with the breath. And we know that when we tap into our breath, especially when we exhale, then we're calming our nervous systems. And so for an hour, you're just tapping into that breath. And that's the biggest gift. And that's the magic. And that gets us out of our head. Because if you're thinking about where your body's supposed to go and you're thinking about your breath, then your mind doesn't have a lot of space to drift and wander. And so it's really that bringing us back to our connection to self, bringing ourselves back to the connection with the breath, calming down our nervous system, and being present. And another thing that I really like to bring to every class in the beginning of every class is to set an intention for that class, for everybody to set their own personal intention. And so it could be to, I like to work the edge. So that's that point right before you're going into pain. You never want to go into pain, but you want to work that edge. It's like um, your point of tension. And so it could be going into class and touching that edge a little bit more, or maybe it's learning that you touch the edge too much and to back off or to listen to your body. One of the ones I like the most is I'm just going to focus on myself during this class and I'm not going to worry what's happening outside of my mat. Or I'm going to connect with my breath more deeply, or I'm going to connect with my body more deeply. And so going in to the class, setting that intention, trying to bring that intention back into your practice all the time, and then that connection with the body and the breath is that's where the magic is.
And I think one of the wonderful things about yoga is there can be a whole class of people and everybody is doing their thing. I always tell people, and I know the studio I go to, I always say everything I offer is an invitation. Take what serves you and modify, what doesn't.
Yeah.
Listen to your body because I'm one who likes to push to the limit.
Hmm.
I want to feel pain. No pain, no gain, right?
Yeah.
And that's not really a great way to approach yoga. So, and I like to think about where can you find ease and where is there going to be tension? So kind of focusing on the area that you are stretching or working. Yes, that should you should feel that. But you don't want your jaw tight. You don't want your shoulders clenched up. So if your whole body is tensing up, you're doing the opposite of part of what yoga is meant for. And
Hmm.
so I like what you said about just your edge. So a little bit doesn't have to be, you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. And in yoga class, if you just focus on you, you can get rid of that comparison like, oh my goodness, look how flexible this person is, or look, she can do this inversion. She's standing on her head and I'm barely, doing this or that. It's such a practice where people accept them. You learn to accept yourself for wherever you are. And I think mentally that's pretty huge because in a typical like gym setting, it seems like it's very competitive. And they even have gyms that are like Orange Theory, where you're literally, or CrossFit, where you're literally trying to see who can do the most in the shortest amount of time or get their heart rate up higher or whatever it
Yeah.
is. But in yoga, it's very individualized. And I think that's really cool. And I think if people are considering starting a yoga practice, but they're thinking, oh, I don't want to because I'm not going to be able to do what everybody else is doing, it's good to know that it's okay. You do what you can do and you go to your edge, and wherever that is great.
Yeah. I think yoga is one of those things that you can see the benefits of really quickly. And so some people that have never worked out, then they go into a yoga class. It can be super intimidating going into any new environment or any new activity. So that's just a given. And that's just like a hurdle that we have to get over. Um, and then you're going to see your strength is going to build. You're going to notice that really quickly. You're going to notice that you couldn't touch your toes and you were 3 feet away. And within a month, you'll notice that shift and you'll see those changes. And so it's going in with that mind of kindness and compassion towards self, working really hard not to compare to others and just compare to your own progress and your own ability. Um, and then if anything, just think about, you're just going in, you're connecting with your body, you're tapping into your breath. That's progress. That's something that you weren't doing before. And then I think it's important to find a beginner class. So there's a lot of foundation classes, and I think foundation classes, even more so than a beginner class, they're going to teach you. There's so many different names, and there's so many different shapes, and there's so many different poses. And it doesn't take long to learn them all, but you have to start somewhere. And so if you go into an intermediate class or an all levels class, you're going to feel lost in the beginning. And so find a studio that has beginners classes until you get used to that language, or those foundation classes. And then I also think I like to focus on alignment. I think alignment's super important for injury prevention and for feeling better. And when you're in proper alignment, then your body feels better in the poses and it doesn't feel like crap. And so go to a studio that will help you a little bit in that beginning part with the alignment. Because if you're sitting in a pose and it feels awful and you just change it a tiny bit, or you use a prop to help you just a tiny bit, then it can feel good. And that's the whole point, is to feel good. When you start losing your breath and you can't breathe or you're holding your breath, that's when you know you need to like slow down, back off. Things are too hard. You need to take a beat and maybe be a little kinder for yourself for a while.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a good point. Learn to do, I'm the same way. I'm a personal trainer and I want to make sure people are functionally doing the exercises properly so they don't injure themselves and so they're working the correct muscles or stretching the
Mhm.
correct muscle or whatever. And so the foundation is really important, but then also that's that's a much more appropriate or approachable entry level because you know you're going in with other beginners and everybody's just trying to learn and then you can progress from there. So, here's what I'm hearing from our conversation. Yoga's strength building, which is muscle building, which in my business is fat burning, metabolism boosting. It increases your cardiovascular capacity and flexibility, balance. It's going to help improve your range of motion and not falling and being able to stay strong and age well. It's also stress relief. It's like a meditation, a mindfulness. It's a way of connecting with your body. It's a way of having more confidence and feeling more powerful. Um, I think, does that cover it? Because that sounds like pretty much the most amazing thing that we could
Uh-huh.
do for ourselves.
Yeah, I'm impressed that you got all that into a sentence because that's exactly everything we went over. I'm super impressed.
Well, it's something that I've thought about for a long time because I've had a yoga practice for a long time. And that's why I wanted to have you on because I just think it's so beneficial. And so I appreciate your wisdom and your expertise in being here today. And so if people listening want to learn more about you, I know that you do some private yoga online even and things like that. So if people want to find you and get to know you better, where can they do that?
Yeah, people can go to my website, www.nickyyoga.com. So it's NICKYYYOGA.com, three Y's. And I work from with beginners or people that have injuries all the way to professional athletes. And I can just customize the class that works for you. And one of the interesting things about doing it is online is it can really work with that alignment. I can see it really beautifully online if the camera's set up perfectly. And so we can make sure that if you're going into studio classes, that you feel good, that your alignment's good. And you can also have the comfort of your own home doing it. We can set up a schedule that works for you. So, yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it so much. And thank all of you for being here and listening in. It was my honor, and I will see you soon.